morning glory. Say there, stop that yawning. A brand new day is dawning. Pull up the shade and let the sun come through. Good morning glory. Spend about an hour underneath a shower and keep on singing like the birdies do.
Coming to you, not live, from 30 minutes north of Republican Central this week. It is Books of the Week on CPL Radio, the network that plays other radio shows, much to my co-host chagrin. And who is my co-host over there? That of course, is book critic, world famous, universally lauded book critic, Steve Donahue. Good morning to you.
Hello, everyone, and greetings from the benighted state of Wisconsin. poor state of Wisconsin.
You know what's interesting is we weren't a state until this week.
Right. Right. You weren't a state until this week. This was the week that Wisconsin became a state.
It's really. So nice. It's really nice.
When you became presidential.
I'm underdressed, Steve. I'm underdressed. Anyway, what do we do on this show besides make Daffy Dad jokes? Well, I'll tell you. What we do is we talk books. And we like to begin our day with a look at the nonfiction world and then stroll on over to the fiction world, and then we step off the face of the earth, although I feel like we have already, and look at something called the wild card, where I get to hurl books at a book critic's head, and unfortunately he's always good at deflecting them.
Usually.
He sends them right back to me. So this is great and exciting. We love doing this show. We love that you're here. And Steve, do you have a nonfiction title for us today?
Well, yes. I have a nonfiction title that I went into loaded for bear. I was assuming I would hate this book. This is Gretchen Whitmer's book. The governor, Gretchen Whitmer, wrote a book. It is like all other political / personal memoirs of this type. It is an audition to the tens of hundreds of people in the world who read. It is an audition. It's get to know me better by hunkering down with me on the written page. Sometimes this audition process can backfire, as we've covered on this channel.
Did she shoot her dog?
Yes. Gretchen Gnome does not, or Gretchen does not kill any innocent animal and brag about it because she thinks that her readers love cruelty. She doesn't do that. Gretchen Whitmer is not only a Democrat, but she's a Democrat who actually acts like a Democrat, cares about infrastructure, climate change, the lives of ordinary people in her state, that sort of thing. Even though this book is clearly an audition tape to go national, she still cares about people in her state. She was born in what to me seems like the mind-boggling year of 1971, which is the same year I bought this shirt.
Gretchen and I have something in common. Oh, did I lose you?
Well, from reading her book, it's your sense of humor or lack thereof. She has already been nationally famous, briefly, because in 2020 she was the object of a very organized kidnap plot.
Yeah,
done by the Wolverines, the Michigan Wolverines, some paramilitary group. Wisconsin, Michigan, that whole cold lakes area grows paramilitary groups like mushrooms.
We do.
We're doing a nice, friendly book podcast, so I won't point out that when extensive on-the-ground research, reporting, in other words, was done to see whether or not there were any connections between the Wolverine paramilitary group that planned the kidnap and torture of Governor Whitmer and the sitting president at the time, that story was killed by its editor. And has so far not been documented at all. Right now, all it is they were an unaffiliated paramilitary group. But there are burner phones, and there's the dark web, and none of these paramilitary groups are actually unaffiliated. But that's okay. Well, she briefly it did not succeed. Of course, she was not kidnapped and tortured and killed on camera, which is what the organizer of the event wanted to do.
Oh boy,
he wanted to do it all, have it all televised, for the greater glory of his chosen politician, which need not be named.
Let's not.
Right. I'm sure that it was Barack Obama. I'm sure that when you hear the scenario of someone wanting to torture and kill someone in order to gain the approval of a national politician, I'm sure that a number of names come to your mind, not just one. I'm sure a number of names come to your mind. But be that as it may, I clearly ate the black donut this morning. I went into this book wanting to hate it. I went into this book expecting to hate it. I expected it to be thin and dumb and pandering and posturing. And there are all kinds of passages in it about how we need to seize our dreams and have the courage of our convictions. But I was wrong. It's genuinely good. It's genuinely funny at times.
Wow.
Read at times. This is the sense of humor displayed in this book. I'm sorry to center on it, but it is the thing that I came away with the most, is the humorous parts. The sense of humor that you will find in this book is normal. It's a normal sense of humor.
Wow.
I know. I hate to break it to either the alt-left or the alt-right, but all of the rest of us in the middle here, we tell off-color jokes all the time. We tell offensive jokes all the time, and we tell those jokes to the groups of people to whom the jokes are offensive, and they laugh their asses off. Out here in the middle between the alt-left and the alt-right, we're okay. We're not made of glass. We like to joke with each other. We like to go straight for the heart of the sensitive stuff, because then we're going to apologize and go out for beers.
Exactly.
In between the alt-left and the alt-right, we're not made of glass. We're not perpetually offended or afraid.
Right.
And I was amazed to find that sense of humor in this book.
Once again, I got to toot our horn. Those of us here in flyover country, we're okay.
Except for the paramilitary groups.
Well, but yes, I mean... Yeah.
And the fact that you keep electing fascists.
Right.
The ordinary people, though. Yeah,
right.
But
beyond all that.
The only really sad part of this book is, again, it's a black donut thing. We don't need to get into it. The only really sad part of this book is that it is totally useless as its main purpose. Its main purpose is as an audition.
Yeah.
And Gretchen Whitmer is never going to hold national office.
Yeah.
No Democrat is ever going to hold national office. So again, and that reading it, with seeing the parts of it that speak to that, reminds you of horrible dark things. But those dark things aren't in the book. It's just the book is a reminder of those things.
So it's funny and sad. Is what you're saying.
The book is funny. The book is extremely personable. Her personality, if she's anything like the person in this book, well, then it's a shame that she was never going to be vice president or president. That is a real shame.
Yeah. Well, maybe of some country. It's just not this one.
Some country. Canada, maybe.
Sure.
But not here. No. And that's the sad part. But that's not in the book. That's not in the book. That's instead in frankly, the Nazi rallies that are being held in your state as we film this. That part, the thing that invalidates this book as anything other than a personal memoir is actually happening in your state as we film this. So there's that, and it's hard to ignore that. But nevertheless, if you do, this will be enjoyable.
It's funny you mentioned that. The recent news story reported that all the restaurants that thought they were going to really clean up during this convention, they're all reporting that, God, these people, none of them tip.
No, they don't.
They leave messes like all over the table. These are a bunch of animals.
Yeah.
It's like having
if your restaurant in Madison if you've had your restaurant for 10 years and it's mom and pop owned and you're really happy and you're an integral part of the community, and for 7 of those 10 years, your chief waiter has been Alejandro, who his family's in the neighborhood, and he waits on these people and he keeps his brown skin on. You don't need to go down this
All right,
route.
let's put those black donuts away, Steve.
Black donuts away.
Oh my goodness. Well, that is
you might have a bumper crop of customers in your restaurant. That's true.
Yeah. Well, that is our nonfiction title, and it sounds like a recommendation, which I think is really, for those keeping score at home, the first political memoir that I think Steve's ever recommended on this show.
Is this popular at the library?
It just arrived, so we're not sure yet, but I suspect it will be. It's in season right now, and a lot of people are certainly.
It's an enjoyable political memoir. That makes it very rare. It will be for your older patrons. It will be a trip down memory lane,
a throwback,
right, to when politicians ran on their personal beliefs and tried to help the people of their state.
Oh, so we're going to file this in science fiction, not
that comes off on the pages like crazy. You'll also laugh.
That's great.
That is very rare.
Absolutely. Man, we need that right now. I would love it would work out well. So that's our nonfiction title, and available right now at the Cedarburg Public Library. Let's saunter over to the fiction department. And Steve, I see you've brought something.
Yes, indeed. We'll post the cover.
It'll be right about there
on the screen there. It has a very boring title, All the Colors in the Dark, or All the Colors of the Dark, or something like that. But it's by a phenom author. The actual title of the book, a better title for the book, is available easily when you read the book. It suggests itself, and would to anybody who reads the book. It wouldn't be this. It wouldn't be All the Colors
of the
What is it actually called? I don't even have it in front of me.
All the Colors of the Dark Donut.
Yeah, All the Colors of the Dark Donut. Yeah, the Dark Donut would have been a better title. It's a novel by a young man named Whitaker who is having the career of a lifetime, so to speak.
What is going on? I have never. This is the holes. You can actually almost like watch them like an animated cartoon going up on this thing.
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable. He had good buzz with his earlier books, but this has just taken off, this book.
Whoa.
And he's made bank on it, as the kids say. I think it's already been optioned for a cable series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or a big screen movie, maybe, where Timothy
it's what you booked
all the parts.
Right. It's what you booktubers call a chunker, though. It's not a small book. Although I noticed the chapters are
long, and it really doesn't need to be. Unless you're reading it with bandwagon rose-colored glasses on. One of the first things that's going to strike you is that this doesn't need to be this long. It's set in a small town named Montclair in Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
Story starts in 1975, starts in the 1970s. There's lots of shellacked on period details of a type that are meant to be member berries, but if you remember 1975 or the 70s just in general, you're going to get to those. You're going to bark your shins on them. You're going to think, oh, that's what was on the radio? Okay, so rather than remind me of the 1970s, this is reminding me that although I haven't looked at the dust jacket, the author must be very young. The author cannot possibly remember this. And
right.
That stays true for a while. This book covers long stretches of years. It goes all the way to the early 2000s. And gets more the background noise, so the background details get more and more believable the closer they encroach on the author's own life. But it's the story of 3 kids. It's the story of 3 kids. There's Joseph. Joseph has only one eye, so he is called Patch. And he thinks of himself as a pirate.
Wow.
And he is best friends with a wonderful, tolerant, young, sassy girl boss who don't need no man, who defends him against the bullying of his schoolmates and the taunting of his schoolmates. His best friend is very saintly, and to save time, her name is Saint.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And there is a young girl named Misty. She's
Really?
very misty. She's very dreamy and unfocused. So her name is Misty rather than Gretchen. And
So archetypes is what we're dealing with here today.
Misty is kidnapped, and Patch saves her. And ever afterwards, in the course of the storyline, their three lives are intertwined as we watch them grow and go through their lives.
Steve, is it wrong that I hate this book already, and I just off your description alone?
You said yourself the holds on this thing are through the roof. You're not allowed to hate it. The book follows them through their lives. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean through the dramatic incidents in their lives. I mean through their lives, their orthodontia appointments, the parking spots that they just barely get, but then don't. So you know you're going to have to go around the block again.
Oh.
And I don't want to spoil the book, and this is one of those books that's so front-loaded with melodrama that you can spoil it just by talking about chapter 2. There's a thing that is going on in their lives. Of course, they are connected by more than just circumstance, because Patch, when he saves Misty, he becomes a victim. And there's a bad guy. There's an evil bad guy, and there's a dedicated cop. The evil bad guy's name is...
Don't do it. I don't want to know. Don't do
it. I think it's Nefaria. I think his name is Nefaria. I'm just kidding, but it might as well be. It might as well be Stan Lee level character name. And there's also a cop who I think is called Gumshoe. And it's not just the lives of these characters that we follow. There is a thread of drama, not only running through their lives, but connecting all of them and bringing them to a shriekingly unbelievable ending.
This is a cartoon. This is a cartoon. I mean,
well, for those of you who are longtime listeners of CPL Radio's Books of the Week, and first of all, God bless you, there must be some sort of Ozempic-style over-the-counter medication for that. But those of you who've been listening to us for a long time might be reminded of my description of this book of another book that we've talked about, Where the Crawdads Sing.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Also the cartoonish nature of the book. First of all, there's no reason for it to be as long as it is, except to give the author a soapbox from which to dole out Hallmark card syrupy observations about life. You get lots of observations. No sooner are you through a scene that is effective, because Whitaker can write an effective scene, then you will get an observation about life. Mm. And at least in Gretchen Whitmer's book, when she gives you an observation about life, she then pulls back and says, well, don't I sound like a sanctimonious donut hole? And because she does, and that saves it. Nothing saves this book. I have to confess, in a week of disheartening stuff that I have read, the absolutely rapturous reviews of this book are some of the most disheartening things that I have read. I've read reviews where the writer of the review said, I love this book so much, I divorced my wife of 20 years. And
wow, that's a strong reaction.
It absolutely does not warrant. It's a pleasant experience. It's a good reading experience. Chris Whitaker is a good writer.
Yeah.
He is unfortunately being, as we've seen and talked about on this channel many times, he is right now in the process of being showered with praise and dump trucks of money for all the worst parts of his writing. It's guaranteed to make him the worst version of what he could be. I hate to say this is heartless, and you don't come to CPL Radio for heartless comments unless I'm directing them at my producer.
I do.
But I think at least my producer will understand what I mean when I say that the best possible thing that could have happened to Chris Whitaker, the writer, would have been if this book were ripped to shreds and hated. Instead,
right,
all the cheapest and easiest things that he did on the page are being praised. They are making him a multimillionaire.
And that means he's going to do it again.
What are the chances that he won't? I waited 30 years for Stephen King to come around, then 40 years, then 50 years. I said to my producer at the time then, who died under mysterious circumstances, The producer at the time, then I said, if we keep praising him for doing all the worst things, he'll never do the right things.
Right. Well,
That
you can stop the presses.
Has never been found.
Yeah. This is better than the Paul is dead Beatles controversy. I want all you people in the comments to start, theorizing about which Jeff you're getting today.
I named them all Jeff, just so they remember.
The original Jeff is right here. He's somewhere in the chorus line. Oh my goodness. Well, this was near the top of my reading list. After this conversation, it may have been bumped down a few slots, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
I mean, if your patrons are loving this thing, if they are lining up and loving it, that's fine. But as
I don't know yet
where the crawdads sing.
Yeah.
If you're lining up for this thing because other people are lining up for this thing, why don't you see if the library system has a John McDonald
yeah,
that you
sure.
can read?
Yeah.
Or Mary Roberts Reinhardt that you can read.
Mm-hmm.
You'll enjoy it a lot more.
Absolutely.
A lot more than you will this.
Maybe Sherwood Anderson if you like that folksy. I don't know. Something, anything. I don't know. Well, that's you flipped it on its ear today. I thought you'd recommend this one and tell Gretchen to hit the highway, but you flipped it. I like that.
We're all about converting expectations here on
Yes, absolutely, without a doubt.
We're all about converting expectations and thwarting the male gaze.
Well, that'll do it.
Oh my God, I set that one up, didn't
I throw the ball and Steve cracks it out of the park. So it is wild card.
Sometimes you throw curveballs.
Oh,
not for a segue.
You mean this?
If we keep up with these cheesy segues, we're going to have people wishing we could go back to the Black Donut. Could you please go back to talking about the end of the country? It's less painful than this.
We liked it so much better when you guys were apocalyptic.
Yeah. Please, could you go back instead of the segues?
There was great comfort in all that. It's like watching The Day After over breakfast. So anyway, it's wild card time. Although it may have been the minute the show started. I don't know. But this is where I grab five or six today. Recent releases off our new arrival wall. Sort of blind. When I run to the studio, I just kind of flash out with my hand and grab something. And I leaned heavily into the nonfiction today. So I know that's Steve's preferred department. And I know you've read this and you probably liked it too. I am holding in my hand a book by Michael Taylor called Impossible Monsters. Dinosaurs, Darwin, and the battle between science and religion. The battle which may have ended, by the way, this week in Milwaukee. But go ahead, Steve.
Well, it's already ended, right? Two
That's
states in the union have already mandated that you not only have a Bible in the classroom, but teach from it. That you have the 10 Commandments posted in the classroom. And when people at public hearings said, well, what about the students in the classroom who aren't Christian? The response was essentially they should become Christian. Just utterly unbelievable. The response was, well, they're worshiping the wrong gods. They should become Christian.
That would kill my mother, Steve. That would kill my mother if I became Christian today. I won't want to do that.
This book is about an unbelievable time bomb. It's about an unbelievable thing, an incredible explosion that happened in the world. You might think Darwin, and Darwin lived long enough to see it start, but really, Darwin wrote a book about a theory, about how life changes over unimaginable amounts of time and reproductive pressure, how populations change. And that's a theory, and science deniers will say it's just a theory, like the theory of gravity or the theory of germs. It's just a theory. You don't have to believe that gravity's real. But the thing that wasn't a theory was that the deeper people delved into quarries, the more they found preserved, fossilized remains of creatures that don't exist in the world anymore. And the deeper they went, the weirder the creatures got. And the one thing that even the most zealot religious people in the time realized was that after the very top layer, there are no humans. the deeper down you go, and of course, if you work in geology, if you work in a mine, you know that means you're going back in time. The deeper down you go in your mine or your quarry, the further back in time you're going. Things are just being layered over. In other words, absolutely impossible to fake. Absolutely impossible for it to be a theory. It's a rock. It's not a theory. It's a rock. And in these rocks, they were finding these fantastical creatures that are absolutely not mentioned in the Bible, that absolutely do not exist anymore. Suddenly, almost overnight, in the public consciousness, came the idea of extinction. Not the fuzzy idea of extinction for like the dodo or the stellar sea cow, where how do we know there aren't some out there somewhere? The buffalo, well, there are still buffalo. Well, the ivory-billed woodpecker, well, how do we know they don't exist in some swamp in Florida? No, these things definitely don't exist anymore, and they once did in vast numbers, an enormous amount of time ago. If you know the whole history of humanity, and you know perfectly well that humans weren't making anything 10,000 years ago. If you're a science-denying fundamentalist Christian, you think the universe was created 6,000 years ago.
Right.
So if you delve into these rock layers and you're only a little way in, a foot down, and there are no more human stuff anymore, but there's still tons of stuff to go.
But fret not. There will be.
You look at those, that's what this book is all about. You look at those layers and you suddenly realize these can't be faked. And they say something about the history of the world that is radically at odds with any religion.
Well, the real problem is
all about. It's about people railing against these things. A couple of the really smartest people in the world, in the Western world, realized immediately what these fossils meant. Didn't just realize what they were and how interesting they were. Because if you leave the Bible or your religious text, the Quran, at home, these are fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dragonfly as big as your German Shepherd. That's fascinating. A couple of the smartest religious people in the Western world at the time immediately realized what this was. They immediately realized that it's not Darwin that is a fundamental death blow to their religion. It's this. Because this is not accounted for in a book that's supposed to be divinely inspired. This is not even hinted at.
Yeah.
And makes that book impossible. Fundamentalist Christians have been wrestling with this ever since. They can't deny that dinosaurs and, football field long insects and polypheres, which are neither dinosaur nor mammal, they're gigantic. They're as big as a building where you have your teeth done. The science-denying fundamentalist Christians, who are a small fraction of Christians, we have to remember, they're victorious, but they are a small faction of Christians. Yeah. They've been spending the last 70 years trying to figure out how those things could be on Noah's Ark. Say nothing of all the others. They're saying, well, those 5-pound dragonflies didn't need to be on Noah's Ark because they fly. Well, no, they still breathe air, and they don't fly all the time. If the Earth is covered in water for a year, they're going to die. And
the interesting thing those fundamentalists you mentioned like to say is, well, a T-Rex is obviously, or a T-Rex bone is just God testing us. I always like that. That's one of my favorite ones. I enjoy that one.
Right. And that goes on forever and ever. They used to say that about T-Rex bones, and now they say it about mitochondria.
You're right.
Now that we can look at genomes and match them up.
Right.
Then they say, well, it's probably the genes themselves.
Actually, this week in Milwaukee, they're saying that Democrats are God's test. So
I never know what to say. I know two of those fundamentalist Christians, those science-denying fundamentalist Christians. I know two of them, and I never know what to say to them. You're saying that your God falsified the rocks, that he falsified the genes, all to trick you into believing, into testing your faith. So basically, your God is Nelson Muntz, perpetually saying, just over and over.
Eternity is really boring, Steve. You got to do something with your time. It's just nothing shaking, man.
Boy, though, as a popular science book goes, you couldn't do better this season.
Awesome. Cool.
Definitely.
No, it looks like fun. I think it'll do well here. I have some other. Well, you know what? I'm going to do that one after this. Let's mix it up a little bit. I have one of my favorite comedians because she's wacky. I've got the Elaine May book here. Miss May Does Not Exist by Carrie Couragen. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Elaine May is a really bizarre blip on the pop culture radar. Because I could never quite tell if she actually is clinically insane from the get-go.
This book is great.
Oh, fun. Excellent.
It's a great book. It's a great book. And it is every bit as endearingly unclassifiable as its subject. It's so great. How depressing would it have been if Elaine May had had a standard, soup to nuts biography with use the proper fork for your salad and whatnot? How jarring would that have been? Instead, this is amazing. The only drawback for this book, and it's easily correctable for your patrons, is that this book really does presume that you know who the subject is.
Okay.
And that's easily fixable. Just call up her entry on Wikipedia on your Fitbit smartwatch and read that Wikipedia entry with attention.
Yeah.
And then you can just dive into the book. And the book is not to be missed. It is incredible. I'm kind of amazed that you would get it for the library.
I don't order the nonfiction, but with this book, I did tell the nonfiction buyer, could you maybe just throw that in your cart? And don't.
Well, she's not that well known, even in New York.
No. Yeah, oddly enough, like just any kind of Hollywood biography. I mean, even it just says Hollywood biography on the cover, which this one does. That seems to people get a little grabby with those. So it's okay.
Well, you have the customized shelf talkers for the library, right? CPL Radio Books of the Week recommend.
Hey, I thought I was the shelf talker. I go up and down the shelves and I never shut up. So.
Yeah, you're the what the patrons refer to as the shelf we wish he would stop talking.
Put him back in his office, please. So a rave review for Miss May.
4 sausages.
There you go. Run, don't walk. If you can still run after all those sausages. We also have here. This looked like a Steve book. I've been doing the show long enough, and I went like, oh, that's a Steve book. This is called The Explorers: A New History of America in 10 Expeditions by Amanda Bellows, and I have a feeling that you like this.
Very, very good. Yes, it's exactly what it says in the title. It's 10 famous exploratory expeditions. Most Americans will only be able to name one, Lewis and Clark.
Right.
This gives plenty of others. The problem with a book like this, any book like this, whether it's the history of the world in 10 navigators or 10 experiments or 10 inventions, is that you'll always be able to tell. If you go into the book blind, you'll always be able to tell which one in the table of contents was the one that started the author being interested in the subject or that they know really well. You'll always be able to tell that.
The longest chapter.
Well, sometimes the longest chapter. Other times it's very painfully wincing not to be the longest chapter. It's holding itself in. I always want to tell authors like that. I know that 10 such and such that ruled the world, 10 such and such that changed the world. I know those books are easy to pitch, but maybe write the book on the subject of your heart and just pitch it a little longer until you find somebody who's willing to take you on just that one thing. But Amanda Bellows does a great job anyway with all the others. I'm not going to spoil it, but if you read the book, you're going to know in 2 seconds which of these is the thing that actually interests her the most.
Her favorite.
Really good job with all the others. This is going to bring to mind a lot of names that you didn't know. It's going to extend into the present day, which is wonderful.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And also it's going to draw some threads that are inherently optimistic. A much darker, the dark donut version of this book could have been written. Almost all of the 10 exploratory expeditions that she describes in this book were actually preludes to exploitation. Almost all of them.
Yeah.
Horrible exploitations where the government isn't funding you to go out into the great unknown with your canoes and your people out of the goodness of its heart. Or in the case of Lewis and Clark, because Thomas Jefferson wants to know if woolly mammoths still exist. They aren't doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing it because you're cheap reconnaissance.
Right. Yes.
you then, okay, aren't you heroic? We'll put a statue up to you, but at least we're not wasting military personnel.
Right.
We put money into training them. We don't care about you. So
Right,
you
right.
go and map these rivers, and if you get filled full of arrows, well, we'll mark that down somewhere.
We have a map that ends here, and so our next explorer try to get a little further from there.
But what happened to them? Never you mind.
No, it's fine.
They're on a government pension on a farm upstate.
They're at the Waffle House there. It's fine.
The dark donut version of this book, the Twitter version of this book, could easily be written, and she doesn't do that. So it makes for entertaining reading.
Optimism from exuding from the pages, and that's what we need of late. Let's move over. This looks, it sounds fun and interesting. Fun is probably the wrong word.
Well, on paper, so does this show. Look how we led people astray.
Mom, I'm watching a show called Dark Donut.
I don't know. It sounded fun and interesting. Turns out it's neither.
I don't think it's chocolate. That's not why it's We have Skies of Thunder, and it's the Deadly World War II mission over the roof of the world, which I really like that subtitle. Caroline Alexander is the writer. This sounds great.
It's terrific. Boy, you're picking winners today.
I know.
It's terrific. Caroline Alexander will be known to a lot of patrons of the library. She's a known quantity when it comes to making nonfiction interesting. And here she has a heck of a story.
Nice.
Only been told in mainstream narrative history a couple of times. Of these missions that if the enemy doesn't get you, the elements will.
Yes. Yeah.
One of those kinds of stories. If you are, an armchair World War II buff,
we have a lot of those. You
probably won't know the details
of
this. So you'll be reading in your own favorite time frame, but you'll be reading new stuff. And by an author who really knows what she's doing. She really knows how to tell a story. I often gripe about the fact that historians think if I just get my index cards in order and regurgitate them, I've done my job. And
right.
haven't. And boy, oh boy, you're picking people who know that that's wrong. You're picking great nonfiction. Well, fiction. Makes what you pick from the fiction.
Well, these are all palate cleansers after you're done with Mr. Whitaker's book, I guess. So.
I didn't mean to dump on Whitaker's book. I'm sure that a lot of people like it. I just don't understand why anyone loves it. I don't get the hysteria over it at all.
Hysteria is the right word.
I think bandwagon jumping. I automatically suspect that.
You see, it's funny because you can always tell there's something in the air when a book like that arrives at our library. And this one definitely is giving off that kind of oxygen. I
always want to suspect it because I read something like Where the Crawdads Sing and I think, okay, this is largely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And all the darkness of the donut is also largely ridiculous. I read something like that and I think, it's just largely ridiculous. So surely all of you are lining up to get on a waiting list for this because of the bandwagon.
Yeah.
Then I think about the one or two occasions where the book at the heart of the bandwagon is not ridiculous.
Sure.
All the light we can.
Yeah.
For instance.
Yeah. Emily Henry was definitely and I understood that. It made sense to me,
So I can't make my easy generalization.
Yeah. Yeah,
it bothers me. I like to make my easy.
We've pulled your favorite weapon, easy generalizations.
I guess I have other weapons in my arsenal, like drawing attention to the sign behind you.
What you talking about? No, this book that I have in my hand is not the Steve Donahue story, but it could be. We have A Gentleman and a Thief by the daring jewel heist of a jazz age rogue by Dean Job is the man's name, which is a great name. And have you had a chance to look at this one, Steve?
I have not.
Yeah,
but it has zero interest to me, so I just haven't bothered to request it from the publisher.
No love of gentlemen, thieves, or the jazz age. Which one turns you off?
All of it, just all of it. I mean, are you really all that comforted by the fact that the thief was a gentleman if he steals a priceless heirloom that your mother gave you? You shouldn't be, are you? You shouldn't be. And are you less of an alcoholic if you're an alcoholic during the Jazz Age? You're not. And all of it just pushes all the wrong buttons. Maybe that's my fault, but I haven't bothered to request it. I doubt that I would ever read it or review it. In fact, it's probably the kind of thing that I would leave at a little free library.
Okay, all right. Well, if you're looking for a copy in the Boston area,
you're on your own for this one. I don't know.
Right. All right, folks. If you've read it, drop it in comments, and we'll defer to you. So nothing wrong with that. Finally, I have a stack of science and history and yes.
We'll defer to them on this one book. Just so you know.
All right. Here's your big chance, folks.
Of the books and all the rest of this show, and indeed all the rest of life, is still covered by Steve is Always Right.
How's that for a dark donut? That's a dozen, right? That's a baker's dozen right there. Well, so that erudite stack of science and history and art and everything that I brought the only one I actually have read, and that would be a collection of Creepy. So this is from Dark Horse Comics, which does the Lord's work as far as I'm concerned. And Creepy is kind of a Tales to the Crypt EC Comics type thing, only really low rent. Really low rent.
Do I want to know who insisted on getting that for the library?
Oh, some schmo. Yeah, we had no choice. City Hall called and said, "You're getting that Creepy thing, right?" So what's really exciting here is they also included the advertisements of the era, because Creepy was published probably in this, I want to say in the probably 60s, 50s and 60s. And what's nice is that I don't think you can still order it, but as you can see, you can get your life-size Frankenstein's monster, all kinds of wonderful things. I believe you can get the glasses that you can see through the ladies' clothing, all those really important products. Sea monkeys, if you're into them.
The life-size Frankenstein's monster was laminated cardboard, and at every joint there was a metal divot so you could move the arms and legs. You could position it any way you like.
Brass brads. They were using.
That's what we considered high tech.
Well, this is fun. These are just your classic tales of supernatural revenge and monsters and beasts, and there's a lot here. Have you had a chance to look at this, Steve?
No. Once again, it's just like a force field separates me from the gentleman thief concept or the glamorization of the Jazz Age. Same thing for anything horror. You're ending on my kryptonite here. Anything horror has never worked for me at all.
And this isn't really, to call this horror, it's not too particularly horrifying. And again, it's just quaint mostly. It's from an era when, they would, the big denouement would be like, and then the hand rose from the ground. So it's not terribly chilling per se, but it sure is a nice little nugget of a bygone era. I will,
But am I right that there are black and white collections out there of horror magazines that are much, much worse, much more graphic?
Oh, certainly. Oh, yes. Absolutely.
So Creepy isn't that, but there were things like that out there.
Oh, sure. And there still is. There's you'll still see. Just got something recently. Someone had done a black and white, very nicely illustrated version of Conrad's Heart of Darkness, but they added a lot more gore and blood. It's just, I bought it and I leafed through it and I thought, does this belong in the city of Cedarburg? But we'll find out. So yeah, there's definitely horror. This is the roots of that. This is when I don't know if the comics code, I'm assuming, was already functioning, and they would have, but it's fun and silly and a lark. And if you're looking for true escapism, I think Creepy, Volume 6, there's 5 volumes of that beforehand. There's so much. And you can't do that in one sitting, but it was fun. It was enjoyable. So there we go. That is a stack. We did well, and Steve, I'm glad I grabbed all that nonfiction.
Lots of recommends.
Yeah,
lots of good stuff.
Excellent.
I know that it's an uphill battle, but you patrons out there who think, it's too hot or I'm too busy for nonfiction, you are missing some really good stuff.
Yeah.
The same law applies to fiction as applies to nonfiction. You're either telling a good story or you're not.
Right. which wasn't always the case. Nonfiction was considered a dry, pocket protector, finally, I think the nonfiction publisher said, maybe we should try, engaging and entertaining a reader.
Right.
It seems like they've nailed it now. It seems like they're really hitting it.
3 generations ago, in the age of, the great books and Encyclopedia Britannica sold door to door, and Alistair MacLean on TV and whatnot, there was a hierarchy. It wasn't good for reading. It wasn't good for readers.
Yeah.
But there was an idea that there are these big, dusty, important books in the world.
Yeah.
And when that idea went away, when that idea was exploded, when that idea was murdered, when publishers suddenly realized, oh, well, okay, we have the intellectual cachet of having those books, but Jacqueline Suzanne is making us all all of a sudden, nonfiction publishers realized, well, maybe our nonfiction should compete in that market. Not be dumb, but be readable.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And adopt storytelling techniques of a forward momentum.
Without watering down the factual stuff at all. And that has happened.
That's great.
There have been writers for the last 60 years who've been terrific at that.
Yeah.
If you're a patron who thinks I only feel like fiction, you're missing out.
Oh, absolutely. And that was me. I was a fiction. And it's funny, when I first got here, I was actually the nonfiction buyer, and I thought, well, fiction's where I'm more comfortable. But now I kind of have a little buyer's remorse. Because there's cool stuff going on over there, and I'm over here with Danielle Steele's rich weirdos. So what can you do?
And the library itself also experiencing buyer's remorse over the whole when you first got there thing. I'm assuming.
Well, let's not even talk about
that. Much like Works of the Week, you looked good on paper.
Please, that's a tipping point you're talking about here. We don't. My cats need to eat. Let's be careful here. Oh my goodness!
And by extension, our viewers are also having buyer's remorse.
These right here.
Oh my god! Those are the only 2 viewers we have left.
Why, Paul? Why did you put this on? Why? Oh my. Well, before you answer that question of why did I put this on, let me remind you that this delightful show is brought to you every week at this time. And when I say at this time is whenever you push play, by the Friends of the Cedarburg Public Library, an amazing group, a powerful group. Oh, Steve?
One of whom was a gentleman thief during the Jazz Age.
And it is who you think.
Well, pretty much it would have to be. There's only one who's 150 years old.
He's the one we prop up in the corner with the Sanka. So there we are. Wonderful show today, sir.
They're all books that people would want to patronize.
You're so right. Even though we say we're not scripted, we sure act like it.
Bad scripted. Yes.
Bad scripted.
What we meant to say is we don't have a good script.
No, we have a rejected script and we're using it. Patreon.com/books of the week. Stop on by and shake out your change purse. And we will gladly snap it up like the greedy book readers that we are.
Here at CPL Radio's Books of the Week, we proudly announce that we can be bought.
for pennies on the dollar.
Yes, for very little money. We're not expensive at all.
Dark donuts are really cheap nowadays. So it's a delightful thing you can do. It helps the Friends of the Cedarburg Public Library, even the guy in the corner with the Sanka. And it helps
us to identify him as a gentleman thief. Maybe get rid of the monocle. Honestly.
Oh no. Don't talk like that about Patch.
If he wore a monocle, I would have liked the book a lot more.
So much trouble we get into here. And of course, we would like to express gratitude to you for watching the show. If you do patronize our Patreon page, drop in some comments there. And actually, if you have any requests, if you pay at a certain tier, we will try to talk about things that you suggest on the show. I have one in the hopper for next week. So next week, we will talk about something that one of our patrons suggested. So you too can control this show if the price is right. I used to
Leave
sell
the
cars.
money on the counter. Leave it on the nightstand.
I sold cars in a prior life. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Steve. Steve, keep reading. Read a lot, and we will exploit you appropriately. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.